What's going on, guys? I am back. It is Zaitsev. We've got the Phoenix build for you. I promised this to you a long frickin' time ago. I know there's a lot of number crunching going into this build, and I wanted to get it right. I did not want to mess it up. I want you guys to be out there being bosses as the Phoenix. I love this build. I just have to say. So this build is a 26-40-67 that also uses two Grant abilities. By Grant abilities, I'll get to that further on in the video. And if you want to jump straight to the actual build numbers on screen, there'll be a little number thing that you can click in the information bar that will bring you directly to that point. From this point on, though, I will be talking about the abilities and what they do, and give you a better explanation of why to use them and why you're putting points in certain locations. Priority, though, Phoenix Transformation is your highest priority ability. You want to get that to 20 as quickly as possible. It shifts you into the Phoenix form, well, duh, and gives you all sorts of increased awesome wacko powers. Starting off with, it gives you a defense increase, which is always good for Jean because she's rather squishy. It changes your attacks from mental damage to energy damage, which is also good, and gives you a plus 500 at rank 27 energy damage increase. It also increases your attack speed and movement speed is not terribly important, but it is definitely very good to have because it's good to avoid certain attacks. For example, Doom when he does his leap, Juggernaut when he does his charge, Rhino when he does his charge, stuff like that. So movement speed, if you're not using or don't have the spirit to use your charge or your teleport or whatever you might have at the time, this is definitely good to have, bottom line. It increases your maximum Phoenix Force, which is also good because it's your secondary resource, which can be a pain to maintain at lower levels. You gain 7 Phoenix Force per enemy defeat, which that's at rank 27, so at lower levels you gain less. And your Phoenix Force drains at 0.5 per second, which is always the same, but all those other stats increase over time and stats that you put into it. Moving on to your primary Spirit Spender, Kinetic Wave. Project a burst of telekinetic energy that knocks back enemies and deflects enemy projectiles. So not only is this your primary attack because it is a super fast attack, and I tested this over Psychokinetic Implosion, several times because I was really hoping that it was just a fluke that this was doing more damage, but sadly enough, no. Kinetic Wave is the top spirit spending DPS ability due to the amount of spirit it doesn't take up, compared to Implosion, which takes up a heck of a lot of spirit. So as you can see, it does 11k to 16k damage, which doesn't seem too much, but when you factor in its attack speed, it does a ridiculous amount of damage in a short period of time. It also weakens the enemy, so they deal 10% less damage for 7.3 seconds. So it's another way to mitigate damage, which is also very good. But in smaller groups, it might be a little bit of a pain to deal with because it's going to constantly be knocking them back. Keep in mind, though, you can at least put 1 point at the end of this build, depending on where you want to put your last, I believe, 5 or 6 points in Psychokinetic Implosion, and you can literally go back and forth between the two abilities, suck them in, blow them out, suck them in, blow them out, and that is a deadly combination. Moving on, your third priority ability will be Phoenix Inferno. This is the lifeblood of Phoenix. This is what keeps your Phoenix form alive. Not only in the way of Phoenix Force am I talking, but as well as keeping Jean herself alive, as it will help you regenerate health. Create a hotbed of psychokinetic energy around you that damages enemies. While active, convert a portion of energy damage dealt into health. May only be activated while Phoenix form is active and ends the transformation if active when Phoenix Force is depleted. So you gotta pay attention to this when your Phoenix Force is getting low. At lower levels, you're gonna have a hard time maintaining your Phoenix Force, especially on single target. But in a situation where you're going to be doing a lot of AoE, you can just pop this on and you will gain a ton of Phoenix Force with the next ability that I'll be talking about. So the energy damage at rank 27 is 9,095 damage twice per second. So I am getting brute crits of about 31k with this ability right now, which is pretty ridiculous. And this did recently just get a ninja nerf. It did used to regenerate 513 health every single time, or every second time I believe, you hit with the fire damage off of the Inferno. Now, it's not a huge nerf. I think it was just not working as intended, so Jean was able to tank a lot of stuff she really shouldn't have been able to. But now that ability will only generate damage. The regenerate 513 health when you hit with a power now will be any other power you use other than Phoenix Inferno. So it's still there, it's still very useful, but you're not going to be the tank gene that you used to be. Now, the thing to keep in mind too, it does cost 3 Phoenix Force per second. So it can be kind of costly, especially, again, like I said, at low levels, so you're going to have to pay attention to your Phoenix Force very carefully. Phoenix Charge, that is your primary movement ability when you're stuck in a sticky situation. I use, personally, the Ziggurat of Kargul. I hope I said that right, but it's the ability to teleport using your life as a spender instead of spirit. I prefer to do that because I like getting around the map quickly and just being able to refill my health and not have to worry about it. But you got to keep in mind too, in something like, say, the Cosmics, where you're going to take a lot of damage, it's going to limit your ability to teleport with the Kargul if you can't manage your health properly. Phoenix Avatar is the ability that I was talking about earlier that would work very well in tandem with Phoenix Inferno. Your link to the Phoenix entity allows you to gain Phoenix Force and Spirit when you critically hit. So at 26 ranks, I gain 6 Phoenix Force and restore 11% of my Spirit. This essentially makes Jean Grey, the Phoenix, the infinite Spirit spender. She doesn't have to worry too much about Spirit with this ability. Now, I only put 15 points into it because my plus abilities will bring it up pretty high, and at a certain point, it just becomes overkill. This ability is very, very strong in groups, and at higher levels you'll be able to use Phoenix Inferno as a spirit regenerating ability on single target DPS. Next up is one of the most important abilities you'll never put a point into. Wait, what? Yes, that's actually what I meant to say. You want to try and get a item, either a belt or a chest piece, that has grants telepathic detection. Your psychic sensitivity reveals all nearby organic enemies and increases your chance to critically strike. You're able to see all enemies on the minimap and increases your crit rating by 407. Depending on your diminishing returns and how high your crit is, that's roughly 4%. Alright, heading back over to the Phoenix tree, we've got the Phoenix Corona, which is a very important ability to have because the Phoenix is still kind of squishy. Raise a protective field around you that absorbs some of the damage that you take at the cost of Phoenix Force. May only be activated while in Phoenix form, and ends the transformation if active when Phoenix Force is depleted. So that makes your Phoenix resource, again, another thing you kind of have to pay attention to. It only reduces your damage at a static 25%. The only thing adding more points to this will do is increase the amount of damage you can take for each point of Phoenix Force it absorbs. So as you can see on the screen, 18 points for me, 132.5 damage will take off of 1 Phoenix Force. So if I get hit for 200 damage, essentially that is 2 Phoenix points that I'm going to lose. I'm not quite sure the specifics how they round up or round down. I'm just assuming they round up, but that is how it basically works. Alright guys, we're back to the telepathy tree, and one ability that actually quite surprised me was Psychic Lethargy. I'm only looking at this ability because I just, sheer curiosity during designing this video and really number crunching all the abilities, I was pleasantly surprised. I did not expect this ability at all to be useful, but it is very useful after you've maxed out your Spirit Spender. Again, this is not a super high priority ability to get. You'll be probably maxing it out closer to level 60 than mid-range. But at level 60, while using this every 6 to 10 seconds, when the dot actually falls off, depending on how much plus duration abilities you have, this ability actually increases your DPS. I went from a 52-second kill on the speed dummy to a 42 seconds. So this reduces your kill time by about 10 seconds, which is pretty amazing. But not only that, it does also give you a little bit of a defensive boost. It slows your attacker's attack speed and movement speed for the duration of the dot being on the target. And since it's a high cost ability, you obviously won't spam it, and since it's a dot, you won't be spamming it. But like I said, if it's every 6 to 10 seconds, depending on how long your duration is, then you're not going to be running out of spirit using this ability. And it's definitely going to be a boon for you any way you look at it. Exhilarating Aura is definitely a very big one to pick up. Originally, I was thinking between this and telepathic detection. But I figured the aura would probably be the better one to get because it's more stable and it doesn't only help you, it helps your allies. Your telepathic encouragement increases your and nearby teammates' combat prowess, improving both critical damage and the chance to critically hit. Activating another aura will end this effect, so obviously you can only use one aura at a time, but if there's another gene, hey, maybe put 1 point in another aura, whatever. I mean, you get a few extra points at the end of the build to decide what you want to do with them. So as you can see, it adds a critical rating of 332. That's roughly 3.5%. Probably rounded down a little bit, but it's around 3%. Your critical damage rating is about 345, which again, it's probably increasing your critical damage by about 3%. So it's not a huge boon to the critical damage, but the critical rating is definitely a huge bonus, not to mention this is shared party-wide. One of the last abilities you're going to want to pick up, or depending on when it unlocks, I don't remember when it unlocks, but if you're a new player, this is definitely a very important ability to pick up. Phoenix Rebirth. If you are defeated, you are instead rejuvenated by the power of the Phoenix, blasting enemies where you fell and briefly becoming invulnerable. So at 8 ranks, I get 12 to 19k damage. I regenerate 38% of my maximum health, restore 38% of my maximum spirit, and become invulnerable for 2.7 seconds. That has a cooldown of 4.3 minutes. So basically, as you put points into this, all those other stats are going to increase the damage, the restore, the regenerate, the invulnerability, but your cooldown will go down. So let's say maybe you're trying out the new Cosmics and you're having some issues. This might actually be very beneficial for you and keeping you from losing your progress as you get really close to the boss and get wiped out. Because let's face it, the new Cosmics, they're pretty rough, they're time consuming, and it sucks when you have to run all the way back from the beginning. Now you can go with either basic, you can go with either the Kinetic Bolt or the Psychic Hammer. The Kinetic Bolt is very good for groups that come at you in a straight line, because it's going to pierce through and hit all of them. Now the Psychic Hammer, if stuff is all grouped up, you're going to be doing a lot more damage that way. Not to mention, if you decide to maybe make this build your own and change a few things up for your own, go with the Psychic Hammer, because it's going to do a lot of very big group damage if you rely on your basic more than a Spirit Spender. With this build though, you won't really need a basic, unless you're in a situation where you need to range your opponent, because your opponent is doing way too much damage. The way this build is currently set up, it's set up for spirit spending and infinite spirit spending. You should not have to rely on a basic. But we all know from time to time there are situations where you are in trouble and you just need to use a basic. Kinetic Bolt is your go-to ability because all your plus skills will add to the 1 point that's already in it. Or the Psychic Hammer, because the Psychic Hammer does do a little bit more damage. One of the last things you're going to want to pick up is the Psychokinetic Implosion. Because of Kinetic Wave blasting all your enemies away from you, you're going to want to have the Implosion to be able to suck them all in. Now either you're going to want to put 1 point into Implosion or get a belt or chest piece that is opposite of your telepathic detection that has a grant of the ability of at least rank 20. Either way, the utility of the skill is to suck all the mobs in towards you so that you can use your Kinetic Wave and blast them out. Kinetic Wave does a ton of damage, and luckily on bosses you won't have to worry about the knock away feature. Aside from that, that is basically my template for how I do this build, how to do the most damage with the Phoenix. But keep in mind guys, this is not the quote-unquote cookie cutter best build available. This is the build that I like to use and how I like to do as much damage as possible. Every build is built around a person's personality, how they want to play the game. So if you've got something better, by all means, put it in the comment section below and I'll definitely take a look at it. Alright, now that we've gone through the priorities of what abilities you should get, let's go over the skill cycle. Basically, you'll want to try and maintain a melee range and use Inferno at all times. This is kind of a no-brainer. But with that being said, the reason for it is because this is going to be your biggest Phoenix Force generating ability, especially in a group. So you're never going to have to worry about Phoenix Force when you're in a melee situation with a giant group of guys around you. Keep in mind though, you're going to have to pay attention to your health because sometimes Phoenix can get into a little bit of trouble. So anyways, with that being said, you'll be using Kinetic Wave as your primary spirit spender. Now, while that is your spender, you're going to have another one you're going to want to weave in there every once in a while, which is the Psychic Lethargy. Every 7 to 10 seconds, depending on how much duration affixes you have on your gear, the 10%, 12%, 11%, 15%, whatever it might be. So with 20 ranks and whatever duration, it should be between 7 and 10 seconds. Use basics on fights where you need to maintain range, because like I said earlier, you're going to have certain situations where you might not be able to get up close and personal at all times. One-shot mechanics and or even just Doom, for example, stunning you with a giant AoE. You can also use, if you're using the Psychic Hammer as your basic, only in situations where you need to stun, because Psychic Hammer does have a high % chance to stun. Or you can use the Implosion to try and interrupt in those situations if you have 1 or 5 points in that, depending on how many you have left over when you play around with your build. Because remember guys, this is just a template for you guys to kind of get a good idea of what's good and what's bad, and then kind of make it your own. Now that we got that all figured out, let's talk about stat priority, the things that you want to get maxed out first. Most importantly, you want to get your Phoenix Transformation to 40. This is the quickest way to max out your damage overall. Second to that, you want to get Kinetic Wave to 40 if possible. Kinetic Wave is your biggest spirit spender and the ability that you're going to be using the most, so you definitely want to get that up to 40. And after that, you want to go for Inferno, your Phoenix Inferno. Get that to 40 because that also does a lot of very consistent damage and crits a hell of a lot. After these 3 abilities, it's not terribly important to get any of these 4 abilities except for one, which is the grants telepathic detection. You want to get an item, usually your belt or your chest, that grants at least 20 points in telepathic detection, because this will grant you a good chunk of crit. Now these last 3, like I said, it all comes down to preference earlier, and you want to get grants Psychokinetic Implosion, again a utility ability, grants Psychic Hammer to at least 20 points, and grants Kinetic Bolt at 20 points. You want to get at least one of these 3 other abilities. I would typically go for a basic, as where the Psychokinetic Implosion, the only reason I'm really going to be taking that is for the actual utility of sucking everything in. The damage to me is not really all that important. Crit is very important, you got to keep that in mind, and the level that you want to get it to is at least roughly 40%, including your auras. So I went with the Gungear Legendary, which brought me up to about 46% in total after everything. As well as that, you want to get your Brute Crit level to around 40% as well. Brute Crit is just absolutely insane. With 4 Blessings of Hela, you can get 20% Brute Crit right off the bat. And then if you have Wolverine at level 30, I think, or 25 or 30, you will have at least another 2% Brute Crit. With that being said, that leaves you another 18% crit to fill in your gear. Not too hard to do. You'll probably do it through artifacts and possibly a ring. But 40% brute crit is very doable. Your costume affixes, I would honestly go for flat damage for all 4 if you can. But if you're running out of money, and I know mats can be a pain to come across sometimes when you've spent the last 20 minutes re-rolling your costume affix stats over and over again, crit is definitely an acceptable variance as well as possibly a targets attacking you gain X amount of damage for. Those are also decent to take as well. Now your costume core, you're going to want to go with a plus spirit and plus increased health when you use a Medipack core, if you can find one, and a +1 energy, and a possibly life leech if you want to go for straight stats. If you can find this combination, that would be amazing. It's very unlikely because most costume cores are RIF or SIF, so you're going to get those more often than anything. But if you can find that combination, you just found yourself the perfect core. So with that being said, guys, that's basically my build. I hope it helps you guys out, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side.